It's kind of funny. We often think that the most creative people in history, the real geniuses, got there by focusing on just one thing. But what if I told you that's not the whole story? What if their real secret was mastering the art of connecting ideas across a ton of different fields? Today, we're going to dive into the principles of thinkers like Leonardo da Vinci and unlock a powerful method to seriously upgrade your own creativity.
All right, so first things first, we're going to challenge an idea that's, well, at the core of our modern world, the belief that specializing and focusing is always the best way to go. Let's dig into the hidden downside of our obsession with specialization.
I mean, think about it. We hear it all the time, right? Focus, focus, focus. It's what every productivity guru tells you. But what if that very advice, that constant push to narrow your field of view, is actually putting a cap on your most innovative ideas?
So you can really see the two different paths laid out here. On one side, you've got the modern specialist. You go super deep in one narrow area. You live in one mental neighborhood, so to speak. But on the other side, you've got the Da Vinci way of thinking. This says that the real breakthroughs, the really big ideas, happen when you combine that depth with a wide-ranging curiosity that connects totally different worlds. And here's the thing. Being a specialist is great for solving problems we already understand, but it comes with a hidden cost. When you only operate in that one mental neighborhood, the network your brain uses to come up with new stuff, well, it actually starts to shrink. It's kind of like a chef who only knows Italian cooking. Sure, they can make a great pasta, but every new dish is just a slight variation of the last. After a while, everything starts to taste a little familiar. So, if specialization has this hidden cost, what's the alternative? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. Let's explore the powerful way of thinking that Da Vinci was all about, a concept we now call polymathy. And trust me, it's not just a skill, it's like a whole new operating system for your brain. And let's be really clear about what this means. This is not about just dabbling or collecting a bunch of random hobbies. The key principle here is structured, deep learning in a few different fields, with the very specific goal of finding and creating brand new connections that literally no one else can see. And the author Michael Gelb really nails it here. This is the engine of originality. True creativity isn't born from just knowing more facts inside your own field. It sparks to life when you start connecting that information in totally unexpected ways. And I mean, just look at the evidence. This pattern is everywhere. Da Vinci studied anatomy, not to be a doctor, but to make his paintings feel more alive. Steve Jobs famously took a calligraphy class, of all things, and combined that with technology to give the first Mac its beautiful fonts. The principle is crystal clear. The biggest breakthroughs happen between the disciplines, not just deep inside of one. And look, this isn't just some feel-good idea from the history books. There's some really cool neuroscience that actually explains why this method works so well. So let's get into the science of how this approach literally upgrades your brain's ability to create. Okay, for starters, when you do this, you are literally expanding your brain's network. When you learn about totally different subjects, let's say music and economics, you force distant parts of your brain to start talking to each other. This crosstalk between separate brain circuits, that's the biological root of a brand new idea. The second big idea here is something called analogical thinking. Cognitive science shows that the best problem solvers on the planet don't just rely on pure logic. They rely heavily on analogies. By learning across different fields, you're building this massive internal library, a huge toolkit of patterns and ideas you can pull from when you're up against a new challenge. And this becomes your new go-to question. Instead of just asking, what's the standard solution in my industry, you start to ask, where have I seen a problem with this same structure before? A biologist's understanding of how a rainforest works could suddenly unlock a brilliant solution to a business supply chain problem. It's a total game changer for your perspective. And finally, this whole practice builds what scientists call cognitive flexibility, which is basically your brain's superpower to shift perspectives without breaking a sweat. And this skill isn't just about creativity. Research shows it's a huge factor in your long-term intelligence and your ability to adapt in a world that's, well, always changing. Okay, so we've covered the why. Now for the really important part. How do you actually do this? How can you start building this Da Vinci mindset for yourself, starting today? Let's get into a practical framework. So here it is, the 4-step Da Vinci method. Step 1 is easy. Pick your anchor field. That's your main job, your core expertise. Step 2, add a distant field, and I mean distant, not a close cousin. If you're a software engineer, don't just learn another programming language. Study, ancient Roman architecture. Step 3, hunt for patterns.
How did the Romans solve for structural integrity? And now for step 4, where the magic happens, force integration. You literally try to explain your software project using the language of Roman architecture. Is your database the foundation? Is a new feature a beautiful but structurally risky aqueduct? That forced analogy is what sparks the truly original insights. Look, you don't have to quit your job to do this. You can make it a habit by starting small. Just 15 minutes a day. That's it. Spend 15 minutes exploring something totally new. And maybe keep a connections journal. When you notice a wild link between, say, how a coral reef functions and how a startup team works, write it down. This literally trains your brain to hunt for these patterns on its own.
Okay, let's bring this all home and connect it to, well, the biggest technological shift of our lifetime, artificial intelligence. Because this way of thinking is more important right now than it has ever been before. Let's be real. An AI can access and process information faster than any human, period. That's a game we just can't win. But what AI doesn't have is your unique, messy, lived experience. Your advantage is in that cross-domain intuition, in drawing analogies from your one-of-a-kind life, and in an embodied understanding of the world that a machine simply doesn't have. That is your human edge.
So here's the bottom line. We're in an age where any piece of knowledge is basically free and instant. So your value doesn't come from just knowing things anymore. It comes from your unique ability to connect them. AI is an incredible tool for finding answers, but you're the one who has to ask the interesting, unexpected, cross-disciplinary questions in the first place. And that leaves us with the one question that it seems Leonardo da Vinci himself lived by. He wasn't just asking, what's the one thing I should focus on? He was constantly, relentlessly asking, what else might be connected? So if you really want to unlock your creative potential in this new era of AI, don't just dig deeper. You have to go wider, and you have to do it with intention.
You know, what if I told you that the secret to genius isn't what we think it is? That history's most creative minds didn't succeed just by focusing on one thing? What if their real secret was actually the exact opposite? Today, we're going to dive into how they combined super deep focus with this incredibly wide curiosity to come up with ideas that literally changed the world.
We're told our whole lives to specialize, right? Pick a lane, become an expert, and stay there. But then you look at someone like Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, the guy wasn't just a painter. He was a master of anatomy, engineering, biology. His genius wasn't just in his focus. It was in his amazing ability to connect ideas from all these different fields. So here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about the hidden cost of our modern obsession with specialization. Then we'll get inside the mind of Da Vinci and look at the science of his creativity. After that, I'm going to give you a really practical framework you can start using today. And finally, we'll see why this is your absolute secret weapon in the age of AI.
All right, first up, let's dig into the way most of us are actually trained to think.
From the time we're young, pretty much everything, school, our careers, it all pushes us toward this narrow focus. Go deep, become an expert in one thing. And hey, don't get me wrong, specialization is efficient. It absolutely works. But it comes with a pretty big hidden cost.
And here's the thing. Creativity doesn't just come from knowing a lot of stuff. It comes from the connections your brain makes between different types of knowledge. So when you only live in one mental neighborhood, your ideas start to look, well, familiar. They become predictable. And honestly, way less original.
Which brings us to the perfect counterexample, the polymath mind of Leonardo da Vinci.
In this slide, this really says it all. The big breakthroughs happen between disciplines, not just inside them. Da Vinci studied anatomy to make his paintings more real. Steve Jobs famously combined calligraphy with technology to create computers that were beautiful and easy to use. And you can see it today with someone like Elon Musk, blending physics, engineering, and economics to completely upend entire industries. The pattern is crystal clear. Great minds connect things.
So this practice actually has a name. It's called polymathy. It's the intentional act of getting deep, structured knowledge across several, often totally unrelated fields.
Okay, and this is a really, really important distinction to make. Being a polymath is not about multitasking or collecting a bunch of shallow hobbies. It's about being intentional, going deep in a few different areas so your brain can start building these incredible bridges between them and create something that's brand new.
All right, let's get into the science and see how this actually upgrades your brain.
So, learning across different fields does 3 really powerful things to your brain. First, it fires up all these distant neural circuits, creating more crosstalk inside your head. Second, it builds this huge library of mental models, which lets you use analogies to solve totally new problems. So instead of asking, what's the textbook solution in my field, you start asking, where have I seen a pattern like this before? And third, it just skyrockets your cognitive flexibility. That's your ability to look at a problem from all kinds of different angles and come up with truly fresh solutions.
This quote just nails it. The ability to see one thing as something else, to draw a parallel where nobody else sees one. That is the very engine of creativity. And at Polymath's mind is perfectly tuned for exactly that.
So, how can we start doing this ourselves? Well, this brings us to a practical framework we can call the Da Vinci method.
It's a simple 4-step process. First, pick your anchor field. That's your main area of expertise. Second, add a distant field. And I mean something really far away, not just a close cousin. Think design and biology or finance and poetry. That distance creates creative friction. Third, start to pull out the patterns. How does this new field solve problems? What are its core ideas? And finally, this is the most powerful step. Force the integration. Try to explain your main field using the language and metaphors of the new one. For instance, if you're in business and you're studying biology, you might start seeing your company as an ecosystem. And that's where the magic happens. That's where your intelligence truly starts to compound. Now, to make this a habit, just try these 2 simple things. First, spend maybe 15 minutes a day, that's it, exploring a totally different field. Second, keep a connections journal. Just jot down any patterns or ideas or links you notice between the different worlds you're exploring. This trains your brain to automatically look for those connections. And over time, you'll start making these creative leaps you never thought were possible. So why does all of this matter more today than ever before? Let's talk about the age of AI. Let's be honest, an AI can access and process information way faster than any human ever could. That's its game. But our advantage, our uniquely human skill, is cross-domain intuition. It's the ability to pull from our unique life experiences, from our knowledge in different areas, what we call lived analogies, to come up with creative solutions that an AI, stuck with only the data it was trained on, just... So here's the bottom line. In a world where information is basically free and unlimited, the real value comes from your ability to connect that information in new and useful ways. Your creativity. That becomes your ultimate edge.
Leonardo da Vinci wasn't just asking what he should focus on. He was obsessed with a different question. What else might be connected? So if you really want to boost your creative intelligence, don't just go deeper, go wider, but do it with intention. That right there is the real key to unlocking your own inner genius and thriving in this constantly changing world.
You know, the most creative people in history, we're talking Leonardo da Vinci, Steve Jobs, they all shared a secret. And it wasn't just about being a genius. It was a skill, a learnable skill that let them see connections that, frankly, no one else could. So let's get into this, because that exact skill might just be your single biggest advantage in this new age of AI. Here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll tackle the myth of specialization. Then we'll dive into what's called the polymath advantage and the actual science behind it. After that, I'll give you a practical, step-by-step framework, the Da Vinci method. And finally, we'll tie it all together and show you why this is your key to staying ahead of AI. All right, let's start with the myth of specialization. Think about it. From the time we're kids, we're asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? The whole system is designed to push us into one single lane, one specialty, and tell us to stay there for the rest of our lives. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the real, world-changing breakthroughs don't come from digging one super deep hole? What if they come from building bridges between lots of different worlds of knowledge? That's what people like Da Vinci and Jobs were all about. So you've really got 2 paths, right? On the one hand, you have the specialist. That's what most of us are trained to be. You become the go-to expert in your niche, but then there's the polymath. This is someone who develops deep knowledge, not just in one field, but across several. And here's the kicker, seemingly unrelated fields. And here's the hidden cost of being only a specialist. Now, don't get me wrong, it works for solving problems we already understand, but it can also trap your thinking. You get stuck in one mental neighborhood, and pretty soon, all your ideas start to look and sound the same.
And that leads us straight to the solution. Let's talk about the polymath advantage and what happens when you start intentionally mixing things up.
Now, this is really important. This is not about being a jack of all trades, master of none. True polymathy isn't just about collecting random hobbies. It is a structured, deliberate practice of going deep in a few different areas, all with the goal of finding those wild, unique connections that everyone else is missing.
And hey, this isn't just some dusty idea from the Renaissance. Modern science totally backs this up. David Epstein, the author of Range, has shown that having a wide breadth of experience is one of the biggest drivers of creativity. It's simple, really. The more dots you have, the more interesting ways you can connect them.
This is just a perfect example. Da Vinci didn't dissect bodies because he wanted to be a doctor. No way. He did it to understand every single muscle, every single bone, and how they all work together. And why? So he could paint people with a sense of life and movement that was absolutely unheard of at the time. He connected biology to art. That's the move.
Okay, so let's get into the science of this because it's fascinating. This approach isn't just a philosophy. It actually physically rewires your brain. When you learn across different domains, you get 3 huge cognitive benefits. You expand your brain's neural networks, you basically give yourself a superpower in analogical thinking, and you develop some serious cognitive flexibility.
So, first up, neural network expansion. When you learn about, say, architecture and marine biology, you're not just using separate parts of your brain. You're actually forcing those distant brain circuits to start talking to each other. You're increasing the crosstalk. And that conversation, well, that's literally where creative ideas are born.
Second, you get this incredible boost in analogical thinking. The best problem solvers on the planet, they don't just use pure logic, they use analogies. A specialist might ask, how do we solve this problem in our field? But a polymath asks, where have I seen a problem with this shape before? Was it in music theory? Was it in military history? That ability to see the underlying pattern is a creative game changer.
And number 3 is cognitive flexibility. This is your brain's ability to just effortlessly shift gears and look at a problem from a completely different angle. Learning across different fields is basically like cross-training for your mind. It makes you way more adaptable, and it's been shown to keep your intelligence sharp for the long run. Okay, so the theory is cool, but how do we actually do this? Let's get really practical with what we can call the Da Vinci method.
It's a simple 4-step process. 1, pick your anchor field. That's your main thing, your job, your expertise. 2, add a distant field, and don't pick something close. If you're in tech, maybe study psychology or poetry. You want that creative friction. 3, actively look for the big ideas, the patterns, the models, the metaphors from that distant field. And 4, and this is where the magic happens, force them together. Try to explain your job using only terms from your distant field. It feels weird, but that's where the breakthroughs are. And you can start this tonight with 2 tiny habits. First, the 15-minute exploration. Just spend 15 minutes a day learning something totally random and different. Second, keep a connection journal. Anytime you notice a weird similarity between 2 different things, write it down. You're training your brain to hunt for these connections automatically. So let's bring this all home. Why does this matter so much right here, right now? Well, the answer comes down to 2 letters, AI.
Just look at this breakdown. AI is incredible. It can access and process data at a speed and scale we can't even imagine. Let's be clear, you will never beat an AI on information. But what AI can't do is have cross-domain intuition. It can't pull from lived human experiences to create powerful analogies. It doesn't have that embodied understanding. That's our territory. That's the polymath's playground.
So here's the bottom line. Knowledge is fast becoming a commodity thanks to AI. The new currency, the thing that truly has value, is connection. Your ability to weave together different ideas in a new and useful way, that's your ultimate human advantage. AI has the library, you have the wisdom to connect the books.
So I'll leave you with this. Maybe the most powerful question you can ask yourself isn't, what should I focus on? Maybe it's the question Leonardo himself was always asking. What else might be connected? Because that curiosity, that's what's going to keep you creative, valuable, and uniquely human.